Well, Heather, we're back together again. It's going to be another great episode.
Absolutely. Got lots of really fun and exciting things to talk about today.
Yeah, and as is the case, a lot of them are going to focus on AI because that's what's happening in the world. It's actually where we're going to start out with the current events happening. Then you and I are watching some TV and movie shows where we like to extract some wisdom. Then we're going to talk about the excellent thing we learned this week. We're going to try to stump each other with two truths and a lie. Kim Petro is joining us today with our member spotlight to feature one of our members and what's going on in their practice. You're going to pick your favorite Woodard Report article of the week, and that's a wrap. So let's get started with the current events. What are you seeing out there, Heather?
Yeah, so the AICPA and SEMA did a survey of 1,700 executives across the world on their AI strategy and how they are, whether or not they're implementing AI in their businesses or not, and what their feelings around risk of AI, both from their competitors and both from an internal standpoint. And the results were fascinating.
Mm.
So I've put the link in the listener notes. But what's really interesting is the organizations that are already adopting, and I was like, this is surprising, but it's not really surprising, that are already adopting the AI find that they have a strategic advantage over their competitors, and they're also super concerned about whether or not their competitors have an advantage over them, which makes sense because if they're taking the action, then obviously it's really important to them. The other thing that was really interesting is the greatest AI impact, according to the survey. We have to keep that in mind that this is the opinion of these 1,700 executives, right? Is in mining, financial services, professional and business services, and transportation, which isn't surprising at all because if you think about it, these are ones that are very data heavy and very complicated. So they're well suited for AI capabilities and the problems that that solves. Nearly half of these leaders saw AI as a top 10 risk, especially in what they called AI transformed businesses. And so these are the businesses that have already incorporated a strategy, that are already actively using AI within their businesses. And then here comes the really surprising thing, at least for me. Maybe you won't be surprised by this, Joe, but South Africa and East and Southeast Asia are leading in AI transformation and adoption.
Mm.
So they were the ones that had the highest percentage of respondents that said we're fully, we're in, we have a strategy and we're utilizing this within our businesses. And guess who was last?
North America.
North America.
Well,
Yep,
I'm
we
looking at
were
your
last.
notes. I cheated,
Yeah.
but yeah. So and that does surprise me that North America is last. It doesn't surprise me as much that South Africa and Southeast Asia are leading out because that's where you have all of these outsourced centers in South Africa and the
Mhm.
Philippines. I'm surprised that India is not stronger here. They're probably a close second to those or a close third because with it's their economy is so dependent on this sort of trading an hour of work for a dollar or for several dollars that they've got to adapt to this or they're going to lose all of that trade.
Yeah,
Um,
that
so
makes sense. I mean, the whole kind of outcome of this study was that the gap is widening between the early adopters of artificial intelligence and the late adopters of artificial intelligence. And this is a big warning sign to those that are saying, this doesn't affect me right now, and I can catch up once this is a proven technology. This is different from any other technology that we've had in the sense that it is growing super rapidly. The AI companies, the adoption that they're seeing is faster than any other technology in the history of, since the Industrial Revolution.
yes.
And so the longer you wait to become AI savvy and AI informed, the further you're going to be behind. And where this really kind of is super important is in the operational readiness of your company. Can your systems handle artificial intelligence, applications, right? Does
And
your team know how
governance
to
as
properly
well.
use them?
Yeah. And governance is another big piece.
Mhm.
Well, this is a perfect segue to what I'm seeing that's current out there too, because it reflects what was shown in this study, that Basis, an AI automation platform for the accounting process, just raised 100 billion and just became a unicorn at a 1.15 billion dollar valuation. Now, I believe, unless somebody listening to this wants to correct me, they are the first AI enabled add-on to General Ledger Solutions, not an Intuit or Microsoft Copilot or somebody like that that's enabling their AI products. They are the first standalone, integrate with other GL automation processes for month end that and general accounting automation that has reached the unicorn status. So this is big news, and it's not just them. You have raises by other categories in the space too. There's a solution called Penny Lane that just raised 204 million out of Europe. That's 204 million US converted for the US. And then you have Accrual that just raised 65 million. And all of this has happened in the last 30 to 60 days. And then, so if you look at the category overall, the ones that are entering the space as startups, it's approaching $1 billion in funding collectively, or exceeding $1 billion at this point collectively across all of those categories of AI automation. So to kind of accentuate what Heather just said, this is real. And if you were to take some of the recent news stories you've seen where maybe, Bench went out of business and BotKeeper is closing its doors, and you can go see that whole AI thing is just hype. And I've seen some of that stuff happen on social media. That's throwing the baby out with the bathwater. We're talking about first movers. We're talking about companies in the case of Bench and BotKeeper that were founded before there was even ChatGPT 1.0. So that is an apple. This is an orange. Completely different universes. And so dismiss it at your peril, but also don't react. I like to say the sky's not falling, but there are things falling from the sky. So no, the world's not coming to an end, but do look up. You've got to look up, and you've got to respond to what's happening, and respond not by dodging it. That's where the metaphor breaks down. Respond by adopting it. And a good place to start are some of these add-ons that have all the AI embedded. It's not like you have to go hire a bunch of coders, people. Just pick a good tech stack that is built on top of an AI platform, and build your future.
Yeah, it's interesting, Joe, because I've been talking to some firms that are implementing some of these applications, and in some cases, the firms are doing really well with them, and they're seeing a big ROI. But in other cases, they're not. So I think one of the things that's really important, and I'm excited that we have this AI track at Scaling New Heights in June, where we're going to be covering how to vet AI technology and how to come up with a really tangible, strategy for firms, is that we don't know what we don't know. This is new. And so we really need to understand, what does success look like before we actually go out and start to purchase these tools, right? So I'm really excited that we're offering that track. And I think it's going to be really impactful.
Yeah,
for
it's going to be intensely
our
practical too. It's going to
Yeah.
focus on everything from prompting strategies to the rudimentary elements of how to build your own agents in
Mhm.
LLMs like Copilot, and ChatGPT, and then it's going to focus on the more strategic pieces. How do you stack it? How do you build process around it? And the importance. I come back to the governance word. The importance of governance. Right.
Yes.
All right. So with that said, it's now time for our TV and movie quote of the week. All right, Heather, what have you been watching out there?
So, best movie that I've seen in a really, really long time, super enjoyable, Blue Moon. So, I watched Blue Moon over the weekend, and it was hilarious. It was so well done. It reminded me of, old Hollywood, right? Really, really great. So, highly recommend. And so my quote comes from that movie, and it was kind of hard to find a business quote, and so it's a bit of a stretch. But could make it into a business quote if I take it in a different context. So the quote itself is, or I'll tell you what's happening. Larry, who is the main character, who is a playwright and created, these amazing musicals, right, for Broadway. He has fallen in love. He's a 46-year-old man. He's fallen in love with a 20-year-old woman, and he is over the moon about her. And so they're having a very, raw conversation where Elizabeth is sharing that she's fallen in love with this other man, and this other man is not treating her well, like he's stringing her along. And so she's talking about how, the whole relationship makes her feel, illogical and, obsessional and pathetic. Right. And so she's confiding this to Larry, who she sees as a mentor and a really good friend, but Larry's absolutely in love with Elizabeth. Mm. And so Larry responds to her and says, we invest our hearts in worthless stocks, and we know they're worthless, but we cling to them like little children clutching to their little stuffed bears. Mm. And, in this context, it's talking about you fall in love and your mind kind of goes somewhere else, right? Your heart wants what your heart wants, even if it's not the right thing for you. And so we do this in business. I just had a conversation with one of my coaching clients where there was a client that was just not paying their fees, was, really making it difficult for the team, but it was somebody that they knew personally, and they didn't want to let go of that client. And they knew that they should let go of the client, but they were afraid to do that. And so we talked about that, and got an email this week that they let that client go. They did it.
And that's always so hard to do.
It's so hard.
And what I like about your extraction of wisdom there is, there's a financial sunk cost, and then there's a psychological sunk cost. Like, when you're driving in the wrong direction, the best plan is to speed up, kind of thing. Why our brains work that way, I don't know, but it's counterintuitive, it's irrational, and yet we have to identify it and say,
we do.
No, don't speed up when you're going in the wrong direction. Just sort of own the fact that you've got to turn the car around and deal with the psychological sunk cost, which is go ahead.
Well, it's like when we did Face the Yeti, the theme for Scaling New Heights. That's what it is that
the redirection of the path.
So big and so scary, yet as soon as you face the Yeti, all of a sudden you're like, wow, now I'm free, right? Yes. Now I'm free of that fear, and now I can move on.
Yes. It's a natural part of the process. And it's great what you extracted out of that, because we did not orchestrate this, and yet mine is kind of the next step to yours, just like it was with the news segment. Billions, amazing television show. Not for the faint of heart. It's pretty rough. But it is an amazing watch about the psychology of wealth and power and, family life and all those things intersect. But what you have in this particular scene I'm going to set up, you have multi-billionaire Bobby Axelrod. He's a hedge fund manager, and he just came into his billions. So it's all new wealth, and he hasn't earned the respect of the established billionaire class yet. So, he's getting this advice to just slow bake it. It takes years for them to accept you and all of this sort of stuff. And, that's just not his personality. So he says to the person giving him this advice, he says, what's the point of having FU money if you never say FU? And all right. And so I'm using the acronym. So this is a G-rated podcast. The takeaway is, and this is why it's a perfect complement to what you said. So if you're going to change course and you're going to fire that client, or you're going to change that business direction, you cannot be financially bound to that client or to that direction. You've got to have financial independence. Now, in his case, it was billionaires. But listen, you can have independence money, and we'll call it that instead of FU money. You can have independence money and not be a billionaire. You just can't run a practice on hand to mouth without the money driving you instead of you using the money to fuel a vision. So I would say make sure you're financially independent of your clients, or especially any one client. Make sure you're financially independent of the next, business opportunity that comes along that you feel like you can't afford not to take. That's a check right there in your system. Agency and independence go hand in hand.
I couldn't agree more, and that is a struggle, and it usually happens where people end up with the paycheck to paycheck or hand to mouth, right? Out of fear as well, right? The fear of asking for what they really deserve as far as pricing goes, and then the inability to say no to expenses, right? To things they want. So,
Absolutely. All right. So now let's focus on the excellent thing we learned this week. All right, Heather, what'd you learn out there?
So I learned, and I didn't know this, but I learned it. It's kind of a little thing, but opened my eyes. It also AI is that Copilot is actually built on OpenAI models and Anthropic Claude models. I didn't know that. I thought that they had their own LLM, but they actually allow you to switch between all of the OpenAI or the ChatGPT models and the Anthropic Claude models, which I thought was really cool. But the best news is that you actually don't have to choose. There's all these different models that do different things really well. And Copilot has been engineered so that it automatically knows which one to use when you make a prompt. So I had a meeting with Randy Johnston yesterday, and of course, Randy Johnston is amazingly brilliant. And so he was sharing this during the conversation, and I was like, wow, I had no idea. So, and Randy Johnston is going to be leading the core of our AI track at Scaling New Heights. So he's going to be talking to everybody about that, and I'm sure there's going to be tons and tons of gems and aha moments from the attendees of those sessions.
Yeah, and this is not something where they're just licensing those platforms. They have a double-digit interest, ownership interest, investment interest in both OpenAI and Anthropic. So, anytime somebody says, well, Microsoft's way behind on the artificial intelligence journey because they're judging that based off of Copilot as compared to ChatGPT. No, Microsoft is ChatGPT. They are Anthropic. They don't just have their fingers in those pies. They own pieces of those pies. It's a hedged bet for them. The only one where it's really the walls are up high is going to be between Microsoft and Gemini.
Yeah.
It's always Google and Microsoft. They're always the battle of the gods. So, yeah, it's fascinating out there to see how all this is developing. So when we are offering a Copilot centric LLM track, I wouldn't say we're training just on Copilot, but we chose to focus on Copilot in part because you do pick up ChatGPT and Anthropic with that prompt.
Right.
And the other reason we picked it is maybe because of that reason, but I think mostly because of security. Most of the top 100 is building around Copilot. They're not building around Gemini, and they're not going straight to Anthropic or ChatGPT. They're coding all their agents on Copilot. So what we see the top 100 do validates the whole profession. So yeah, fascinating stuff. So I've got one that's kind of completely on a different path now. I'm going to talk about productivity, and I'm reading this amazing book called the Productivity Project that Kim recommended that we all read. And I picked up a little fun fact from the book. The fun fact is that, according to Nielsen, the average American adult watches 3 hours, 43 minutes of television every day. Now, when the book was published, that number was a little higher. So I went and looked at the new number. So the new number is a little lower, but it's not lower for a good reason. It's lower for a bad reason. So we're wasting more time than ever. So 3 hours and 43 minutes of television every day. So, assuming you live to be 80, and you started watching television in sort of the Disney Junior days when you're a toddler, it's going to be over 10 years of your life watching television. And that's before we factor in the social media piece, right? So it's only going to get worse, with the mind numbing, because on the average, Americans spend 6 hours per day on their phones. Some of this overlaps with the television viewing, so keep that in mind. We look at our phones while we're watching television, right? about 2.5 hours a day on social media on the average. So it's not just that we're working on those phones or calling our mother. Those would be things that we would have done when we were working on computers or just had analog phones. It's 2.5 hours a day. I tried to find the actual doom scrolling number, and there were no definitive doom scrolling stats out there. But the guesses ranged from not guesses, but educational guesses and research ranged from 30 minutes to about an hour and a half of just flipping the screen up. But it's at
Yeah.
least 30 minutes of on the average of every American life every day, just flipping the screen up.
Yeah, it's crazy. I always am a little bit afraid to look at my statistics on my iPhone when it tells me my screen time. What I found is as I've gotten older, they say as you get older, you should keep your brain active and agile by doing brain games. So I know that I spent a lot of time doing that. So I do the New York Times games every day. I have several favorites that I like.
Yes. And I would say that's a completely different animal because, again, you would have done that with a crossword book. So that's just
Exactly.
digitization of what you were already doing, making things more accessible.
Mhm.
If you're reading a book on Kindle, obviously not all screen time is equal.
Right.
So we just have to be conscious. So I think the biggest takeaway from that is the 2.5 hours on social. Not all of that is bad. We need to stay connected with people, but I don't think I need to know what everybody's eating for breakfast this morning. So we waste a lot of time with that too. All right. Let's now get into our 2 truths and a lie. We're going to try to stump each other. All right. Heather, what'd you bring today?
Well, as you know, Joe, I live in New England, and we had a blizzard. It was almost a snow cane, but we had a blizzard, and I have 3 feet of snow outside. So my 2 truths and a lie are about snowflakes and
Okay.
snow. So thing one is the largest snowflakes ever recorded were 15 inches in diameter, and you can see I'm putting up. This is about 15 inches. So snowflake that big. Uh, Thing two is loud noises can trigger an avalanche. And thing three is snow is an excellent insulator.
All right. So let's break these down because I don't know that much about snow. I live in Georgia. So I'm gonna lean toward thing one being the lie just because 15 inches is an extremely wide snowflake. I know that loud noises can trigger an avalanche because my wife skis, and she talks about avalanche anxiety all the time, or unless that's an urban legend. And then the snow being an insulator is interesting because water is a conductor, but I don't know what happens whenever it hardens if it becomes an insulator. Since ice definitely blocks sound, I can only think that snow would more block than conduce. So I'm going to go with that snow is an insulator, truth. I'm going to say that loud noises can trigger an avalanche, truth. Though I did pick up most of that knowledge from Bugs Bunny cartoons. And um, I'm going to go with it's just so hard to believe that a snowflake can be 15 inches in diameter. So I'm going to think that's the lie.
I got you, Joe. So
It's
there
because
was
of the
an
Bugs Bunny thing, isn't
actual
it? Is it?
snowflake that was 15 inches in diameter. It was a long time ago. I want to say it was in 1946 or something from what I read. And it was out in the Midwest, of course. So, yes, there was actually snowflakes that were 15 inches in diameter. I couldn't believe it either, but that's true.
Yeah.
So you're going to be totally surprised, and I was too. The lie is thing two. Loud noises actually have no effect on snow.
All right. So that's what I get for growing up on Bugs Bunny.
Exactly. So it's usually typically like if a snow like if snow fell off of a tree, it's motion. So like even if a little bit of snow fell off of a tree branch and hit the snow, that movement could actually cause the avalanche. But no, yodeling and making loud noises is not going to cause an avalanche.
That's really good to know. I can now shout in the mountains. I love it.
Yes.
All right. So let me see if I can stump you because you're usually better at stumping me than I am you. So all of mine are going to be related to AI. First, number one, AI has scored at or above passing levels on CPA equivalent exam content. So it can't sit for the exam. That's private. But they can extract sort of like the prep tests that have the same kind of content, and it passed that. All right. So number two, Agentic AI models that are designed to prepare income tax returns are capable of cheating on those tax returns. And number three, if a single user of AI within a tax practice uses a prompt to provide incorrect tax information or to make a questionable judgment call, the agent will get retrained and will use this incorrect information going forward across the entire firm.
So I know thing one is true because I remember reading that AI was able to pass the CPA exam. I think agentic AI models are designed to prepare income tax. So I guess agentic AI that are designed to prepare income tax returns. I think that would be true because if you develop your language model or your application to allow for that, then it could technically do that, I think. And so the single user of AI, if they provide incorrect tax information or make a questionable judgment call, the agent will get retrained and use this incorrect information going forward across the whole practice. Ooh. I don't think that's true. I'm going to have to go with that one. Although that one also seems like it could be true, but I'm going to pick that one as the.
Well, that is the lie. All right, so let's break them down. So you won. Let's break them down. So, and I was very careful how I phrased it because AI can't pass the CPA exam because the CPA exam includes exercises that require it to perform tasks. So, if I just said it can pass the CPA exam, that would have been a lie. But it can answer all the questions. It knows all the information for the questions part of the exam. So that one was true. And the second one is true because of the introduction of biases. We learned this in our Brown class, right? That AI is constantly influenced by. It learns. It grows. It's not programmed. It grows. It learns. It mimics thought, and just like a human mind might do, just like me with Bugs Bunny, right? And a bias was introduced that I assumed as fact, and every AI model is susceptible to that, which means a really good programmer, a company like TaxGPT, is constantly defending itself against these biases, which is why you want to use a product like that instead of using ChatGPT to ask questions, right? So yes, it absolutely is capable of cheating on a return, just like a human is. And then if a single user changes a prompt, it does not retrain the entire model because that would give a single user way too much power. Instead, it would correct the single user. And if it doesn't do it in a confrontation, it might say, "Oh, well, thank you for that information." It's going to go, "No, I know you're full of it. You're wrong." It all comes down to how confrontational you build the prompt. But a single user cannot create a bias or cannot retrain a model. All right, very good. Then we also picked up a lot of AI inside talk in the process. So if that intrigues you, Scaling New Heights is the place to be because it is one of our tracks that we're going to be offering at the conference with sessions every single breakout hour. And if it doesn't intrigue you, we have other tracks, of course, that are going to focus on general practice advancement, general technology, as we always do. So now it's time for the member spotlight. And Kim Petro, one of our coaches in Woodard, has joined us this week to talk about one of the members that she coaches. Kim, welcome to the podcast.
Joe and Heather, thank you so much again for having me back on. And it's interesting. The stars have aligned because you were talking about pricing earlier. And that's what I'm going to feature today is one of our members that has done really an exceptional job at not only redefining her pricing in her firm, but also really owning the value she provides. So I'm really excited to talk about Lisa Crawford of Crawford Financial Solutions. And so what I want to talk about here is she's really starting to speak to the outcomes and the client success stories with new prospects, which is really exciting. So she shares tangible benefits that other clients have realized, and it positions the pricing around partnership and results. So it keeps past wins on top of mind with existing clients, but also she uses growth graphs to visually reinforce value and progress. And so this aligns the pricing increases with demonstrated growth and complexity, right? So beforehand, she previously got behind on her pricing for those high growth clients that she works with. She works mainly with the clients in the construction industry. And so because she got so behind in those, the results in the large increases and it resulted in large increases in difficult conversations because she wasn't looking at their growth potential. So she shifted to quarterly reviews for high growth clients. And what that did, it eliminates the surprise pricing adjustments. So it ensures that pricing keeps pace with business expansion and it supports a proactive advisory and scalable service for them. So that's really exciting. She's moved away, right, from the hourly and task-based pricing and really starting to adjust the pricing, reflecting on strategic impact, right? And so she's letting go of equating value with hours worked, and she's really recognizing the transformational client impact, which is awesome. And she attributes that, I'm going to toot our horn a little bit here, but the pricing course from Woodard has helped influence the structure and the strategy, and our coaching has helped her work through the limiting beliefs that she's had. And that's what I really want to celebrate today is her mindset shift. Because before, right, she was so locked into that mindset of, I can't ask for this, it's too much. And so we really worked with her challenging that scenario in her brain. And so she now has some client feedback for provided language to articulate the value, and also just really like I said, limiting beliefs are a thing of the past, I hope, for her. So it's really built confidence for her pricing conversation. So I just really wanted to celebrate her. She's done such great work, and I think it's going to go nowhere but up for her. So I'm very excited.
Yeah, that is fantastic. You get the value proposition right, the pricing right, and this is half the battle, if not more than half. So, So thanks, Kim, for joining us, and congratulations, Lisa, on building such an amazing practice. All right, Heather, we're going to finish up with your Woodard Report article of the week.
Well, Joe, I have I have a shameless plug again. So my favorite article of the week is Explore the AI Track at Scaling New Heights 2026.
Yeah, well, we've been talking about it the whole episode, but we didn't even engineer the episode to promote the track. It's more just that we can't talk about AI without believing in this track. Yeah. So,
exactly.
But you wrote an article this week that kind of breaks it down, right?
Well, we just worked so hard to curate exactly the right sessions that I'm just so passionate and excited about it that I just want everybody to know about this incredible training that we're bringing to the profession.
Yes. And we're recruiting the best of the best. Randy Johnson's going to be our anchor here, and we have some other folks that are going to be contributing in that we'll be announcing soon. Authoritative voices with practical education. And so read the article and it'll kind of break it down. It's just this one track, or this one piece. It's sort of a 5-point piece that Randy is leading, but there's so much more. What you're not going to get at Scaling New Heights, you're going to get it, but not every session is not people just telling you what it is and that you need to adopt it, because that's sort of like, here's advisory, go do it. All right. No, tell me deeper. Break down advisory. What are the models? Tell me a little bit about how to get started. Give me something I can build a plan around and I can adopt when I get back home. And that's what this is going to be doing. All right.
Yes.
All right. Exciting. All right, Heather, that's another episode. It's a wrap.
Well, that was lots of fun. Thanks, Kim, for joining us today.
Yes. Thanks, Kim, for joining us. And we'll see you next week.
Bye, everyone.